Today we're going to look at how do I know where to find the answer to a question. When we are reading, we are often asked to answer questions, and the best way to find them is to know the relationship between questions and answers. So here we go. What do you already know about answering questions? Well, you know they start with certain words: who, what, when, where, why, do, it. You also know you need a place to find the answer, whether it be in your head or whether it be in something that you're reading or working on. So today we're going to look at 4 different types of questions that you are often asked when you are reading a text. The first kind is a right there question. The answer is in one place, and often the words from the question and answer are in the same place. So the words in the question are going to lead you to a place where you literally can put your finger on the answer. The first question is, what river did Lewis and Clark follow in the spring of 1804? Here is our text. We will read it together. Lewis and Clark followed the Missouri River for several hundred miles as they moved westward into the spring of 1804. Along with their goal of mapping the new territory, the 2 explorers were also instructed to keep careful records of their journey. As they traveled, the explorers gained a great deal of information through the difficult process of trying to communicate with the Native Americans they met. Their journals were filled with words such as skunk, hickory, squash, raccoon, and opossum, which are Native American terms for plants and animals. After their return in September 1806, Lewis and Clark reported to President Jefferson, and their journals were eventually published. So the question again was, what river did Lewis and Clark follow in the spring of 1804? So let's look at what we have here. We have Lewis and Clark. So up here I see Lewis and Clark. And I see spring of 1804. And up here I see, if I can find my mouse, spring of 1804. The word follow and the word follow. So that would lead me to believe, if I'm looking for a river, that the river is the Missouri River. So Lewis and Clark followed the Missouri River in the spring of 1804. The answer was right there. I could put my finger on it using the clues from the words in the question. So that is a right there. And the next kind is a think and search. How long did it take Lewis and Clark to complete their exploration? The answers are in the text, but I might have to look in a couple different places and put things together to get it. So let's go back to our text and look at our text. So how long makes me think I am looking for times? So here we have spring of 1804, that's a time. I'm looking at September of 1806. So if I put those 2 pieces together, I know it took them about 2 years. So it took Lewis and Clark about 2 years to complete their exploration. I know this because they began in the spring of 1804 and finished in September 1806. So that's a think and search. I have to think about what they're asking, search around. I may have to go to 2 to 3 places in the text to find the text. So these questions here, let's look at what kind of questions we think they are. Why did the explorers keep journals during their travels? Well, I'm looking for journals, and let me see. They were expected to map the new territory, keep careful records, and they gained a great deal of information. So all that would lead me to believe that all of this information was what they needed, so they put it into journals so that they didn't have to remember all of it. And so that would be a think and search, because I had to look in a number of places. When I look at the next one, what was the goal of Lewis and Clark's journey? I see that word goal, and I saw that word goal up here. Their goal was mapping new territory, keeping careful records. So that was a right there, because the answer was right there. They're both alike in that both questions use the text and the answers are in the text, but they are different in that number one didn't give me any clues to actually find the answer, and I had to go to a few different places to find it. But number two, it was right there. Author and me is a third type of question. Author and me is not necessarily in the text, but you're going to think about what you learn from the text. You're going to use your background knowledge. You're going to make an inference in order to answer the question. So the question is, who sent Lewis and Clark on their expedition? So when we're looking at who sent them, well, let me see, that means who means I'm looking for a person. So definitely, I don't believe the Native Americans would have sent them because that's where they went. The only other person I see is President Jefferson, and that would lead me to believe that they gave the information to President Jefferson. And I know normally if somebody gives me a task to do, I give the information back to them. So I can infer that President Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark on their expedition. I know this because they gave the information in the journals back to President Jefferson when they returned. So that is an author in me. And the last one is on my own. On my own, the answer is not in the text. You probably could even answer it without reading the text. It is, why do you think Lewis and Clark used Native American terms for many of the plants and animals they encountered? So I need to use my schema. I need to make connections. I need to understand when I have been in that kind of situation. So I know that they went there. I know that they used the Native American words. I know they had a hard time communicating. So I would say if I went to a different country and I didn't speak the language and I saw an object, I didn't know what it was, and they gave me a name for it, that would be the name that I used because it would be the only name I would have. So let's look. When I look at this question, number one, how do you think the Native Americans felt about Lewis and Clark? How do you think is a clue that it's going to be on my own? How do I think the Native Americans felt about the Lewis and Clark expedition? Well, I'm trying to think. If people who were from a totally different place came to my backyard, I would feel maybe a little uncomfortable, but I would also try to share things with them and communicate with them. So it was probably a little uncomfortable for them, but it also seemed that they shared information. Number two, why was trying to communicate with the Native Americans a difficult process for Lewis and Clark? So I'm going to say that something I know when I don't speak the same language as someone else is that that's really hard. So I'm going to say they both spoke different languages, and that's what made it hard. So that question would be a author and me. So they're both alike in that you're using information from your head, but they are different because in number two, you are connecting to something you learned in the text. So those are the 4 types of questions that we have had, and you're going to be working with those 4 types of questions today.